Omar's voice tripped with arrogance as he mocked the quiet girl in the corner. She's too young. Too simple. Too silent. What could she possibly do? But silence doesn't mean weakness. And youth doesn't mean ignorance. What Omar didn't see was the fire behind Amara's calm eyes. A fire fueled by every insult, every word he thought she couldn't understand. This was more than just a negotiation. This was the beginning of a battle. And when the moment came, Amara, the underestimated child, would unleash a truth so powerful it would tear down Omar's empire brick by brick. Amara had always been a quiet child. At just 12 years old, she preferred sketching in her notebook over playing outside, listening rather than speaking. But silence, as her mother often reminded her, wasn't emptiness. It was power waiting for the right moment to speak. Her mother, Nadia, worked tirelessly to provide a simple life. She often brought Amara along when she cleaned offices after hours. To most, Amara was just a shadow, polite, small, invisible. No one looked twice. No one imagined she carried within her a gift most adults couldn't even dream of. That gift was language. Amara absorbed words the way others breathed. English, Spanish, French, and Arabic, her favorite. She listened to radio stations, whispered along with TV anchors, and even corrected her mother's pronunciation. Nadia never understood how her daughter's mind worked, but she knew it was something extraordinary. And one night, that gift would be tested. When Nadia was hired for a large corporate event, she brought Amara along, instructing her to sit quietly in the corner while she worked. The event wasn't just any meeting, it was a high-stakes negotiation with millions of dollars on the line. The room filled with powerful men in sharp suits, their words wrapped in arrogance. At the head of the table sat Omar, a man feared in business circles for his ruthless deals and his talent for breaking rivals before they even realized the game had begun. Amara sat still, notebook in her lap, eyes lowered. To them, she was invisible. To Omar, she was even less, a child not worth acknowledging. But when the negotiations began to stall, Omar leaned back and muttered something in Arabic to his associates. His words were cruel, sharp, dismissive, about Nadia, about Amara, about anyone who dared oppose him. The others laughed, confident their insults were locked safely behind a language no one else in the room understood. Except one person did. Amara's pen froze against the page. Her heartbeat quickened. Every word sliced through her, but she kept her face calm, her eyes steady. She had been underestimated before, but never like this. And as she listened, she realized something chilling. Omar wasn't just insulting people. He was revealing secrets. Dangerous ones. Details about backdoor deals, hidden threats, and betrayals he planned to unleash. It was in that moment Amara understood, this wasn't just another night following her mother to work. This was the night her silence could either protect a dangerous man's empire, or destroy it. Her decision would not only change her life, but the lives of everyone in that room. Amara's chest tightened as Omar's words swirled in her head. She had heard insults before, but this was different. This wasn't just arrogance, it was cruelty wrapped in strategy. He wasn't mocking for amusement, he was mapping out betrayal, testing the waters of greed with every sentence. Her mother moved quietly between the tables, pouring water, straightening papers, invisible to the men who dismissed her as just the help. Nadia caught Amara's eye once, giving her a reassuring nod, stay calm, stay quiet. But Amara's calm was cracking. Omar leaned forward, lowering his voice though still in Arabic. They'll never see it coming. By the time they realize what happened, their hands will already be tied. And that little maid, he flicked his gaze briefly toward Nadia, smirking, she won't even know her daughter sat here useless. The men chuckled. Amara gripped her notebook tighter, her nails digging into the cardboard cover. Every fiber of her wanted to stand up, to shout back that she understood every single word. But what would that do? She was 12. A child. To them, she was nothing. That night, back at home, Amara finally broke her silence. She told her mother everything. The insults. The plan. The way Omar laughed as if the world belonged to him. Nadia listened, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly. Amara, are you sure you understood? Every word, Amara whispered. He thinks no one can stop him. But I can. I know what he's doing. Her mother's first instinct was fear. What chance did they, two ordinary women, have against a man like Omar? But behind that fear burned something else, pride. Pride that her daughter was brave enough to want to fight back. The next morning, Nadia took a risk. She reached out to Mr. Harrison, a respected figure on the board who had long suspected Omar of shady dealings but lacked proof. At first, he laughed. A child translator? You expect me to put my career on the line for that? But when Amara calmly repeated whole phrases Omar had said, detailing not just the words but the tone, the timing, the context, Harrison's smile faded. He leaned forward, realizing this girl wasn't exaggerating. She was telling the truth. Still, the board was skeptical. Some dismissed it as childish imagination. Others feared Omar too much to act. And Omar himself? He grew bolder, confident his enemies were too weak, too divided to stop him. Days passed, and Omar's deals moved forward. Factories were sold off. Jobs were threatened. Families whispered about ruin while Omar grew richer and smugger. Each step made Amara's secret harder to carry. She watched her mother work late into the night, exhaustion on her face. She heard neighbors talking about debts, about fear, about giving in to Omar's demands. And each time, she clenched her fists, knowing she held the one weapon none of them realized existed. But fear gnawed at her. If she spoke, Omar would know. If she stayed silent, innocent people would suffer. One evening, Amara overheard Harrison on the phone. We have one chance. He's meeting the international investors next week. If we can expose him then, we can stop everything. But without evidence, we're finished. Amara stepped forward, her small voice steady. You don't need papers. You need me. The room went silent. Harrison studied her, torn between disbelief and hope. Nadia placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, her eyes firm. She's right. Omar already underestimated her once. Let him do it again. That night, Amara lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. She knew what it meant. She would walk into Omar's world again, pretending to be invisible. And when the moment came, she would have to stand, small, young, underestimated, and challenge a man who had built his empire on fear. The thought terrified her. But beneath the fear, something stronger stirred. Resolve. Because deep down, Amara knew this wasn't just about proving she understood. It was about proving that truth, no matter how small the voice that carried it, could shake even the most powerful walls. The day of the meeting arrived with heavy clouds hanging low over the city. For most, it was just another Tuesday. But for Amara, it was the day everything would either break apart or begin anew. Nadia held her daughter's hand tightly as they walked into the towering glass building where the investors had gathered. She kept her face calm for Amara's sake, but her grip betrayed her nerves. Remember, she whispered, silence can be strength. But when the time comes, don't be afraid to let your voice out. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was suffocating. Wealthy investors lined the polished table, papers stacked neatly, pens ready. At the head of it all sat Omar, perfectly composed, his smile sharp as a blade. He looked untouchable. Mr. Harrison greeted them quietly, giving Amara a reassuring nod. But even he seemed unsure. Could a child truly tip the scales against a man like Omar? The meeting began. Omar's voice filled the room, smooth and commanding. He painted pictures of wealth, stability, and opportunity. In English, he was the perfect gentleman, calm, respectful, convincing. But when he switched to Arabic, his words twisted. Hidden beneath his polished promises were threats and manipulations. He mocked the investors, bragging that they were too blind to notice how he was bleeding them dry. He outlined steps to seize properties, cut jobs, and tighten his control until the entire board bent to his will. And all the while, Amara sat silently at the edge of the room, her notebook in hand. To the investors, she looked like nothing more than a bored child doodling during a meeting. To Omar, she wasn't even worth acknowledging. But every word in Arabic landed like fire in her mind. She wrote quickly, sketching phrases, jotting notes, her small hand racing to keep up with the flood of deceit pouring from Omar's mouth. Her chest ached with frustration. The investors nodded, swayed by his charm. They couldn't see the trap being built around them. She wanted to scream it out, to throw her notes across the table and expose him right then. But Harrison caught her eye, giving the slightest shake of his head. Wait. The hours dragged on. Omar's confidence grew with every nod of agreement he received. His laughter rang out, low and cruel, when he slipped in jabs under his breath. Finally, Omar leaned back, spreading his arms as if he already owned the room. Gentlemen, he said, switching back to English, shall we finalize? The investors murmured, ready to agree. Harrison's face was pale. The trap was closing. And then Omar made his mistake. He glanced toward Nadia, smirking as he muttered in Arabic, pathetic. Even now, cleaning up after us. And the child, still nothing but a shadow. The words were casual, but they struck Amara like lightning. Something inside her snapped. Her pencil broke in her hand, the sound sharp in the silence of the room. All eyes turned toward her. Omar chuckled. What is this? Did the little one finally grow bored of drawing? But Amara wasn't drawing. She was recording. Listening. Waiting. She looked up, meeting Omar's gaze for the first time. And though her voice was soft, it carried through the room with steady resolve. I'm not drawing, she said. I'm listening. And I've understood every single word you said. The room froze. The investors exchanged confused looks. Omar's smile faltered for the first time, though he quickly tried to cover it with a laugh. But Amara didn't look away. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. This was it, the moment of no return. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed the room. Every investor turned toward the small figure at the edge of the table, their pens frozen midair. Amara stood slowly, her notebook pressed against her chest like a shield. Her knees trembled, but her voice, though quiet, was steady. You thought I didn't understand, she said in Arabic, her words crisp, deliberate. But I understood everything. Gasps rippled across the table. Several investors blinked in shock, glancing at each other. A few whispered, trying to piece together what was happening. Omar's eyes narrowed. His smirk was gone. For the first time, he looked rattled. He leaned forward, his voice sharp. Sit down, girl. This is not your place. But Amara didn't sit. She lifted her notebook and began to read aloud in flawless Arabic, repeating his exact words from earlier. The threats. The insults. The schemes. Every hidden dagger he thought was safe behind language now hung in the open air for all to hear. One by one, the investors' faces hardened. Harrison's jaw tightened with grim satisfaction. Omar shot to his feet, slamming his hand on the table. Lies, he barked in English. She is making this up. She's a child. Amara met his fury with calm. If I'm lying, then repeat in English what you just said about Mr. Johnson's company. Or what you said about firing half the staff before Christmas. The room erupted in murmurs. Mr. Johnson himself pushed his chair back, his face red with shock. You said what? Amara didn't stop. She turned another page, her small hand steady now, her fear melting into resolve. You mocked these men. You called them blind. You promised to ruin families, to crush anyone who opposed you. You even insulted my mother for cleaning this room. Her voice cracked for just a moment, then strengthened, but you didn't realize I was listening. The weight of her words hung heavy in the room. Investors who had been ready to sign now stared at Omar with suspicion and disgust. Omar's mask cracked. His voice rose, desperate now. "She's a fraud. A little girl pretending to be smart. You will not take her seriously." But it was too late. The power had shifted. Harrison stood, his voice ringing with authority. "We will take her seriously, Omar. Because unlike you, she has no reason to lie." He turned to the investors. "Gentlemen, you heard her. And I've suspected this man's corruption for years. Now we have proof, not just words, but his own arrogance exposed in front of us all." The room buzzed with outrage. Chairs scraped back. Papers slammed shut. One investor tore up the agreement, the pieces fluttering like broken promises to the floor. Omar tried to regain control, shouting in Arabic again, threats, curses, fury. But now, every time he opened his mouth, Amara translated instantly, exposing each venomous word before it could poison the room. His greatest weapon, his hidden tongue, was gone. And a 12-year-old girl had ripped it from him. Finally, Omar's voice faltered. His face was pale, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He looked around the room and saw nothing but betrayal and anger staring back at him. Amara closed her notebook gently and spoke one last time, her voice soft but final. "You underestimated me. You underestimated all of us. And that was your mistake." The boardroom erupted, not in laughter, but in applause. The investors stood, shaking Amara's hand, praising her courage. Harrison's eyes gleamed with pride. And Omar? His empire began to crumble right there in that polished room, shattered by the words of the child he had called a shadow. The meeting didn't end with signatures and handshakes. It ended with fury. Phones lit up as investors called lawyers, freezing accounts and halting contracts. Security was summoned, and for the first time in his career, Omar was escorted out of a room he once ruled. His protests echoed down the hall, shouts about lies, betrayal, conspiracies, but no one listened. The mask was gone. The charm broken. His empire, built on arrogance and deception, was collapsing before his eyes. Amara sat back down, her small frame dwarfed by the massive chair, her notebook resting on her lap. She felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. For the first time, the room looked at her not as a child, but as someone who had changed everything. Harrison knelt beside her, lowering his voice so only she and Nadia could hear. "You did something today that none of us could. You saw the truth, and you had the courage to speak it. Never forget that." Nadia's eyes filled with tears as she kissed the top of her daughter's head. "I told you, my little one, silence can be power. And today, you used it to protect us all." News spread quickly. Within days, Omar's name was splashed across headlines, his wealth frozen, his allies abandoning him. He faced investigations, lawsuits, and the humiliation of watching the empire he had built on lies crumble into dust. And Amara? She returned to her simple life, but it was no longer the same. Strangers greeted her with gratitude. The board publicly thanked her. Harrison made sure her education would be secured, scholarships waiting for the day she was ready. But for Amara, the greatest victory wasn't the applause or recognition. It was knowing that her voice, small, quiet, often ignored, had been enough to topple a giant. She looked at her notebook one last time, the pages filled with words she had once carried in silence. Now, she understood their true weight. Because when the world underestimates you, sometimes the greatest revenge is proving them wrong. And that's how a 12-year-old girl, underestimated and dismissed as nothing more than a shadow, brought down a man who thought he was untouchable. Amara's story isn't just about language, it's about courage. About standing up when the world tells you to stay silent. And about proving that truth, no matter how small the voice that speaks it, can shake the walls of power. Think about it, how many times have people underestimated you? Called you too young, too weak, too quiet to matter? Maybe, like Amara, you know the truth, silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes, it means strength waiting for the right moment. If this story inspired you, even just a little, then don't keep it to yourself. Backhand index pointing right, hit that like button to show your support. Backhand index pointing right, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Backhand index pointing right, and of course, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one, stories of courage, justice, and the underestimated rising up to prove everyone wrong. Because here, we believe in one thing: every voice matters. Even the quiet ones. Thanks for watching, and remember, never let anyone decide your worth.